Okay, so just to deal with that next little topic of dealing with our drop-down list, there's really two aspects to it. It was just showing the first name, and it was not actually sorted in any particular order. Kind of hard to tell with only 3 records, right? But you know, imagine a drop-down list with quite a large number of records. You definitely want it sorted, okay? So we can utilize LINQ, because LINQ is the language integrated query, is how it's actually pulling the data together to show in that drop-down list, okay? So we're going to talk about how a select element is given data, how that whole works inside this system, and then how we can improve the data that's passed over so that it shows the full name and is in an alphabetical order, right? As it says here, LINQ gives us a powerful query language. By the way, they've made it even better in .NET Core. This is one of the areas where .NET Core is actually further ahead than the .NET framework. LINQ is even more powerful now, right? And we're going to look at how we can use it to improve our drop-down list, because good UI design always calls for drop-down lists to be in alphabetical order, right? Okay, so that will be where we'll leave off, but to do that, let's look and see how it actually works. So let me come to, I can close these pages. I could pick one or the other. Let's start with the create page. So inside the create page, okay, by the way, you see a lot of Bootstrap in here, the column system in Bootstrap. That's why it can, you know, rearrange things on the screen. We'll learn more about that shortly. But basically we have all these form groups. There's a form group for each element, right, for each property, okay, consisting of a label, okay, for each property, as well as an input control and a validation for, right? That's where the data shows up from those validation error messages and so on. So that's the same. So it decides what kind of an input you need, okay? So for example, for our email and so on, that it will actually make sure that it actually shows the red underlining underneath and so on. For our date of birth, okay, all I have to say is input for my date of birth, and it will actually use the calendar control and so on, right? So all that is handled with a simple ASP4, right, with an input control. But coming down here, this is the most interesting one in a way. Here's our doctor, right? So we have a form group, we have our label, and we have a select. Select ASP for doctor ID, right? The class in Bootstrap is a form control, and the items collection comes from our view bag, doctor ID, right? So the items collection for select in this tool, as well as .NET Framework, is exactly the same. It's called a select list. It's a data structure containing the ID and the text to display of a collection to show in the drop-down list, right? So that's how it looks in the HTML. Let's go back to the controller where we prepare the data and pass it over, right? So if I go to the patient's controller, let's come down to the create. I'm just shrinking down all the, that was, by the way, Control-MO is a shortcut to just shrink all the code sections so I can find them more easily. I don't have to scroll so much, right? So I'll just come here to the get for create, right? So here's the code that prepares that select list to go over to the actual view, right? Notice we're throwing it into our carry-on luggage with the name Doctor ID. That makes sense because over here we said our ASP items was viewbag.doctorid. Don't be confused by the term viewbag. Viewbag is just another way to say view data, right? You can either say view data and use the square brackets and the name of the for the name value pair. It's a dictionary in quotes, or you could change this to, I could do it this way as well. It would be exactly the same. I could say view bag dot doctor ID. That's totally equivalent. In the end, it's identical. This compiles down to view data with quotes around doctor ID. Just they thought that this was a better idea, but with the it's just is the infinitesimal performance advantage to the other way of writing it, right? But that's why it looks a little different here. They weren't consistent. They left the scaffolding here the same, viewbag.doctorid. Okay, so viewbag.doctorid. It's exactly the same thing. It's just a different way of writing it. Okay, but what we're storing in here is the dynamic property. You can store anything you want. Okay, so we're storing a new select list. Select list has got a few different arguments. Notice that the first thing is a IEnumerable list of items. The second one is a data value field, and the third argument here is a data text field. By the way, there's another argument if you want to pre-select something out of the list. And we can pass the idea of which one to pre-select. So the items collection comes from my context. That's my DB context dot doctors. So that's all it's doing. It's just going and getting the entire DB set of doctors. Then it's showing, storing the ID as the value for each item in my drop-down list, and first name as the text to display. Well, that's obviously we would want to change that to full name, right? And that would give us the full name instead of the first name in my drop-down list. Or maybe actually, no, formal name works better. Okay? Last name, comma, first name. That's better for sorting it alphabetically. But we still have to sort it. So I could do that in a few different ways. Believe it or not, I could actually say dot order by, right? Now I have to use one of those Lambda expressions. I know we haven't talked about it much yet, but just bear with me for now. A Lambda expression is really just, instead of passing a fixed value as, say, as a parameter, let's me pass a function as a parameter value. That's what a lambda is. So what I'm saying here is, if I give you D, D goes to D dot, it's like f at x, right, as a function. So I'm going to order by last name. Okay, and that at least put it alphabetically by the last name, right? To keep on going, I'd have to also add dot then by first name. If you're, I might as well go dot then by D goes to D dot first name. And I could keep going with middle name, but that's probably more than enough, right? So that's your first LINQ query. There you go. Questions? Yeah. By the way, you can put it on separate lines, right? Which we often do. So it's a context. So dot doctors is my DB set. Dot order by the last name, then by the first name. These lambda expressions, it's like saying if I give you D, this is what I want you to give me back. D dot first name, right? If I give you the doctor, you return the first name, or you return the last name, right? We'll learn more about lambda expressions soon. So that would be one way to order it, okay? And then it'll show the formal name. So that's good, right? So let me run the application. So now if I go to patients and create, down here, there it is. It's showing the formal name, last name, comma, first name, and it's sorted alphabetically, which it probably, I don't know if it actually changed the sort order, but trust me, it really is sorted alphabetically. Let's add a new doctor. We'll create a new doctor. Alan Albert. Okay, so if I go to patient, create new, sure enough, he's at the top of the list, even though he's the last record at. So just to prove that it really is sorting it alphabetically, right? All right, so that's good. One thing though, I don't have that on the edit yet. I only have it on the, and let me show you this. Okay, I won't take time. But it doesn't have it on the edit yet, just on the create, right? The other thing is, on the edit, this would be fine, as long as it pre-selects who is the current selected doctor, right? And the other thing is, when you're creating a new one, you really shouldn't pre-select anybody, right? There shouldn't be a default. It should probably have some sort of prompt like select a doctor. Well, that's a real easy fix. I can do that without even stopping running, because it's just in the HTML. So let me come to create view, okay? Inside my select here, again, I'll zoom for the back of the room. Just let me push enter first at the opening select tag. So there's the closing select tag, right? So I'm just working inside the select tag. I can just hard code in an option. Option, select a doctor. okay? So now I'm hard coding that, and that'll be at the top of the list. Then all the data from my ASP items, that select list, will be added underneath it. Kind of like how you did the all option with our drop-down list in web forms, right? You added it to the items collection. Well, it's just straightforward HTML here for us, right? We're just hard coding an option in to our select list. Okay, so I can just save that. If I go back to my browser, I can just refresh. And there it is. Now it says select a doctor. So that's a better design for the UI, right? So it forces them to actually pick a doctor. Otherwise, you know, Dr. Alan Albert would have just got everybody by default because people never thought to change it, right? Okay. Do we have time? Yeah, we have time. All right, so that's a good improvement, but, you know, we see that this code is over and over again inside my controller. We'll find it repeatedly. It's also in the post here, right? Same thing. So rather than fix it in 5 or 6 places and then change it one and maybe do it differently in another and then update it in one and forget to change all the other places, you know me, I like that dry principle. I'd like to put it in one location, right? And this is especially helpful later on when you get multiple drop-down lists that you need, right? If you have multiple foreign keys, then it's really, really helpful to have it all in one place. So what I'll typically do is right at the very bottom, after all the insert, update, delete commands and so on, I'll make a bit of room. And in here, I'll add my own method, right? I'm going to take it right out of my copy-paste file. So you can see on the other screen there, it's just under my consolidate select list in controller. Optional, but a good practice, right? So I'll just select this code, paste it in here. Okay. This is kind of fun because it gives me a chance to show you this is the exact same query, right? Done in a different syntax. So next class, we're going to talk about LINQ, and I'll be comparing the two. This is called query expression syntax, and the other that we did it a minute ago was the extension method syntax, where you just go dot and keep on adding dot then by, dot order by, etc. That's extension methods, right? This is what they call query expression syntax. And sure enough, it looks a lot more familiar to those who have come from an SQL background, doesn't it? Right? So from D in context dot doctors, order by last name, comma, first name, right? Select D. The only thing that really seems weird is select is at the end and from is at the beginning, right? But remember, when you learned SQL, we even showed you a trick that if you type select because it had to be the first line in TSQL, but then fill in your from clause, and when you go back to the projection, the select, you'd actually get some IntelliSense because the system had time to figure out what tables you were selecting from, right? Well, same idea here, but right from the get-go, they said, well, you know what? That's stupid, right? Why not just put from as the first thing we specify? Then we get IntelliSense throughout the whole thing. So this is just a different way of writing the same query from D just being our placeholder variable, so I can refer to each element, right, in this collection, okay? Order by last name, comma, first name. I don't have to use a Lambda expression when I do the query expression syntax. And finally, I say what it is I'm selecting, right? I can just select each D representing each doctor. And then in my view data doctor ID, I just pass that my select list is made up of that query, okay, ID, formal name. Now here is where, okay, that final argument where I can pass the ID of the given one if I do want to pre-select it, right? It's optional. So what I do is I pass in the patient object itself, make it an optional argument, so I don't have to pass one. It just assumes the patient is null. And using the Elvis operator, I can just grab the ID. It'll just return null if I don't give it a patient to work with. So that's better. So now, every time that I would actually have that bit of code, like right up here, instead of all this, I can just call my populate drop-down lists. There it is, right in IntelliSense. I can pass it in the patient, because this is a case where I actually have a patient to work with, so it'll have an existing value. So I'll just replace all those other lines of code with this one, and then I have it in one place, right? So up here, the same thing. Just paste that in. So all that work I did, I'll just replace it here with my call. That way, if I ever change it, it's changed in one location. Ah, this is the one where it's a little different because the first time I pull up a create, I don't have an existing patient. But that's okay. I don't need to have something pre-selected out of the list. So I'm missing one though. It's in the, oh, no, I guess I got them all. Yeah, that is all of them, I think.
Where did you replace?
Just throughout wherever I saw that view data equals new select list. Right, I think there's 5 in total. Yeah. I'll just look through. Oh, I missed one. The one I missed was in the get for edit. Okay. Yeah, I'm supposed to find it here. Okay. I just used Control F to find to make sure I'd found all of them. I could have tried to do the whole thing with a search and replace, I suppose, but I'm there now anyway. All right. So just to run it as a final test here. So now when I go to edit, okay, see it has the currently selected doctor there. So I could change it. There's no prompt at the top because all I should see here are data values, valid values to choose, right? So I could choose the appropriate doctor. Maybe I'll move, who is this again? Wilma. I'll move Wilma over to Charles Xavier. Click Save. And then I can see here that Wilma is now assigned to Charles Xavier. So that's her family doctor, right? So it did work. If I create a new patient, OHIP number first name Jim, John, Johnson, date of birth, right? So I'm creating a new record, so there shouldn't be a date, right? Let's go back in time here to, let's make out like it's 1999. Isn't that a song? Okay. Notice it gave me an up-down here, right? Pretty nice HTML5 up-down control for expected yearly visits. Phone number. Email. jj@home.com. Did anybody ever have a home.com email address? I did. I think it was an Outlook thing at one point. Hotmail, they came up with home.com for a little while, and then they got rid of it. Okay, so what doctor are we going to assign here? Oh, notice what happens if I click Create. Ah, how come I don't have a error message there? I'll have to figure that out. Okay, Jim Johnson, assigned to Gregory House, and away we go. I'll look into that. Okay. All right, so that finishes off really, I'm not going to try to go into the iValidatable object. There isn't time yet, so we'll pick up at that point in class. Okay. Any questions about what we covered? So just to summarize there, okay, we have our drop-down list alphabetically sorted by using a little bit of LINQ, showing the full name of the doctor wherever it's needed, cleaned up the user interface a bit using our summary properties. Question?
Can you explain the last step again? The last step was not clear.
Okay, the last step again. Sure. What we did is there were 5 spots where in code it would prepare a select list, put it into the carry-on luggage, our view data, with the name doctor ID. And that allowed wherever we have a select control that we want to populate with data, you can have its ASP items set to our view bag doctor ID, right? So that's how we prepare the select list to pass it. So instead of having that code repeated 5 times, what we did is we put a single method, right, that adds it to the view data or view bag, whichever you prefer. Syntaxes are interchangeable, right? But we just use the LINQ query to make sure it was ordered by last name and then first name. And then we specified that formal name would be, if I hover over here, you can see the IntelliSense. Now I can't move over. There we go. Okay. The first argument being the IEnumerable collection of items for the drop-down list, the data value field, and then the text field. So the data value is stored internally for each option. That'll be the primary key of the doctor, and the formal name of the doctor is what we display in the text. Okay. The nice thing about this is if you eventually have 2 or 3 foreign keys, you can just go comma, add, additional objects if necessary, and build a drop-down list for them as well.